What do you do when someone else is struggling and they're going through and learning a lesson for themselves, and they are in the thicket of that lesson and they're attempting to project the lesson onto you? It's not your lesson. It is calling you to set a firm boundary and to remain embodied in yourself, but it isn't yours to take on. And you notice that most of what is being said is a projection. It is using attack-based language. It is telling you things that when you hear it is not true of your reality. Maybe you're hearing something about yourself that someone is saying, and when you receive it, if you're grounded in yourself, you might say, wait, I wasn't actually thinking that. I'm not feeling that. That's not where I'm at, right? I'm actually really clear. That's their lesson. So it calls you to set a firm boundary. So how do you set that firm boundary? What do? You don't want to defend yourself back, because that's not helpful, because then it just starts a game of attack, defend, attack, defend. No one wants to play that game, right? I don't. I'm done with it. So what do? Because it's hard, because whatever you're going to say back is likely, because that person is in that mindset, they're likely going to take it in a way that is going to feel like they are being attacked, or that it's you doing it, when it's really just you setting a healthy, loving boundary, because you're not willing to play the game. You're not willing to accept what is being dished out to you. But you're also not just cutting them off, because there is that one choice. You could say, I know what this is, I'm not accepting this, therefore I'm just not going to respond. I'm just going to cut this off. However, we can take loving action and we can learn to communicate in a honest, clear, direct, gentle, compassionate way, and set a boundary and not accept what someone is trying to attempt to make us accept. Especially if this person is not someone you sought out for advice or went to go learn a lesson from. It's really important to be clear about the energy and what you are experiencing. Did you seek this person out to learn something from them? Are you open to learn? If not, then be firm, be clear, set the boundary gently. And I know for many of us, it's easier to not respond. Something happens and they get some toxic energy coming at them from someone, and they think, this is that person's stuff. I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just not going to respond. And in fact, I'm not going to deal with this person. I don't want them in my life anymore, because that energy is just toxic and not good, and I just don't want to deal with it. Or if we haven't done our self-work, then we could actually take the energy on and make it about us when it's not. Okay, but there's another way. We can learn to hold space and hold a clear container and remain embodied in ourselves. But sometimes our work is to not communicate, is to not communicate. I was trying to think of another way to actually say that, but the hiding from it and running from it is, the easier, more comfortable path, because we don't have to use our voice to communicate a healthy, loving boundary. For some of us, that really triggers us to have to communicate what is hard, what is challenging. We have to speak the message that is really we're afraid to communicate. And maybe we're afraid, we want to avoid the flashback we're going to get from this other person, from this situation. However, that is actually why it's appearing, is because we are someone who needs to learn to communicate in a good way, to remain embodied in ourselves, to not accept other people's stuff as our own, and to learn to stay embodied and set that communication and to speak it. There is no opportunity to learn and grow when nothing is communicated, right? We just keep running away from people, and eventually we have no one around us, because everyone has some level of toxicity, something they're working on. There's going to be questions and confusions and misunderstandings, right? So when we run and hide from it all of the time, not only do we sort of put ourselves on a pedestal thinking, oh, well, that's toxic and I'm not engaging that, so I'm going to put myself over here, but there's no room for growth, not for you, not for self, and not for other either, right? how it is navigated needs to be navigated consciously, intentionally, in a good way to avoid the playing the game of what is happening. However, you can't hide, and you got to be skillful about how you respond to it. So what do you do exactly? Well, it depends on the circumstance and what's happening. First would be to get very clear. Is what is coming up true that is coming at you? Is it true or is it not true? So you got to be self-aware. You got to check in and see, how's my energy? How am I being? What frequency am I operating at? What am I thinking? And be able to be grounded in yourself and to create a clear enough container that you can have that understanding of you, your embodied self. Then you can ask yourself, is what is being given to me? One, did I ask for it? Am I understanding it correctly? Did I ask for it? Did I give consent to it? Was I asked if I was open to receive it, or was it just given to me without any form of consent? An example would be advice. Somebody might have advice for you, and maybe you're not open to learn. Maybe you're not in a position to hear advice. Did that person ask if you were open to learn, if you were open for feedback? Or did they just come at you and tell you about yourself and what you think and what you should do and how you ought to go about it, and hold expectations to you that you didn't even know you were agreeing to, okay? This is where I'm saying it's important to get clear in yourself and to be really grounded and embodied within yourself, because a person may be handing you something and you might accidentally accept it and take it and eat the dish and then end up in self-worth issues or feeling all manners of distortions and confusion, thinking that it's yours. And all empaths are going to understand what I'm talking about, because this is a game we've all had to play, right? We eat the dish, and then sometime later we're like, what is this? And then eventually we learn this wasn't mine. I absorbed something that was not mine. So part of the work is to learn how to get clear in the self so that you can be very clear when something is yours and when something is not. It is possible. It takes work, but it is possible. And what I'm suggesting here is a process of doing that. So when that thing comes at you, when that comment, when whatever it is, that situation comes at you, first is to get into your own self and embody and clear your space, and to be self-aware and consciously embodied within your own energetic space, to clear your space. From there, it is then to begin a dialogue. Ask a question. Notice what was said, and then from that, it will show you the path to what needs to be said without defending yourself and without accepting what is being given to you. Ask a question. Is there an expectation here that has not been communicated that I have somehow been expected to respond to? Ask a question back and see then what the answer is. Also, then, when you're clear about the circumstance, you can begin to set a boundary, and you can set it gently and you can set it with compassion. And how you do that is going to be dependent upon the circumstance and what it's asking you to do. At that point, if you notice that it is unhealthy dialogue, it is abusive, toxic dialogue, to just cut it. Because sometimes we think that we're going to be able to set a boundary and it's going to be respected, but unless that other person is really going to take some accountability and show up and say, yeah, I realize that I'm doing this and I apologize. I see what I'm doing here and I'm attacking and I'm saying this and I'm saying that, then it may not be possible to have a dialogue with that particular person. You'll want to tune in to see what the situation is calling for. Either cut it and walk away. However, if you are learning to activate your voice and to have more comfortability in speaking and communicating your boundaries and in a loving, compassionate way, and having your message be heard, and to feel like your communication is effective, then when these situations come up, it may be helpful to begin to not run away from them, but to begin to communicate your truth. And sometimes that's exactly why it's showing up, is because through your boundary, you learn to communicate your truth. And in communicating your truth, you are learning to embody yourself better. You're becoming more clear about your space and what is yours and what is not yours. You're learning to not accept other people's lessons as your own. And you're giving other people a chance to actually do their work as well. Perhaps you can relate to a situation where you have been involved with someone or in a situation where someone didn't communicate with you and it left a lot of confusion, especially if you're an empath. That can be very confusing. It leaves us wondering, wait, what happened? What did I do? What is this about? And so it's helpful when someone actually can communicate their truth. So whether you're on the giving or receiving side of this, it is important to recognize if someone is communicating their truth to you, listen, see what they're saying without retaliating against. Ask, like, is this true for me, right? Am I doing this? What is this person actually telling me? Without thinking they're attacking me, like, what is this? Like, step back and say, what is it they're communicating? Is this actually true? Am I doing this? Communication is key. Instead of running and hiding behind our fear of communicating, show up and communicate. Speak truth. Be willing to communicate. You can do it in a clear way. You can hold yourself and not get lost in it and not allow yourself to be derailed from what it is and the message that you're making. Thank you for listening to this video. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. And if this resonates, maybe share in the comments what your struggle has been with communication and your voice. Are you afraid to communicate? Do you have hard messages to communicate that you're afraid to put out there because you're afraid of the backlash that's going to come at you because of what you need to say? Do you frequently run into situations where something happens and instead of actually communicating it, you just cut people off or avoid them until the energy calms down? Are you frequently saying things and beating around the bush? I used to be the queen of poetic messages, these abstract messages that I knew what they meant, but it was my way of avoiding speaking a truth, a hard truth that needed to be said. But I was afraid to put that out there because I didn't want to trigger anybody. I wanted to people please, right? So instead I made a beautiful poetic message that people didn't get. There are some of us who, we've got to communicate some stuff. So have you been doing that in your interactions with people? Like something comes up and because you want to be nice and play it nice and keep everything smooth, you're like, no, I'm not going to say anything. This is their lesson. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to avoid it, put it over here, pretend like it's not happening. That's their issue. True, it is. However, you may be someone that is being called to actually communicate as a teacher, to use your voice to share something that might be a little hard for someone to hear. There's no way around it. The only way is through. Like, subscribe, share, and I'll see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.